It is 6:34 p.m. on February the 1st, 2021. The board will now come in session. We have a regular board meeting of the trustees of Goose Creek Consolidated Independent School District. At this time, Mr. Sampson, was this meeting properly posted?
Yes, it was.
And do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
So we call this meeting to order. At this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Chapa for our opening exercises, but I was asked to please inform all of you, make sure your microphones are on red mute for this portion of the meeting. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. O'Brien, and members of the board. Tonight's prayer is being led by Mr. Howard Sampson. Will everyone please rise? The pledges tonight will be led by 5th grade student Keegan McGee. The following students will be singing the Dare song and the Thank You song by Teresa Jennings. The students participating are Kalia Agana, Isaiah Costello Castro, Javian Davila, Emma Gibson, Mackenzie Groff, Adriana Gutierrez, Tavian King, Lane Landry, Adrian Limas, Keegan McGee, Elijah Madano, Landon Pogue, Giselle Resendez, Kason Smith, Riley Sprang, Judith Tello, Riojas, Alexia Thomas, and Zoe Beth Valencia. These students are under the direction of music teacher Ms. Marcia Goodwin and principal Ms. Blanca Capetillo.
Will you please stand with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the U.S. flag and the Texas flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Texas flag.
On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Yes, we always had a mighty fine time, singing joy. passion, who is in control, and who is always sincere. I dare to live with the broken heart of wisdom, even though I am young, with a long way to go. I dare to live with the camera behind me, even when someone else goes past the rest of my show. Do I dare? Do I dare? Yes, I do, because I know where I stand. Do I dare? Yes, I do, because I have my own place. Do I dare? Yes, I do, because I know that I can. Do I dare? Do I dare? Yes, I do. I I get to choose how my life is going to happen with a mind that is clear and knows what's wrong and what's right. I get to choose to be ready for my future. I can see it now. It's full of promise and light. I get to live with the knowledge that I'm better and the choices I make are the best ones for me. I get to live with integrity and honor and a vision for things I could possibly be. Do I dare? Do I dare? Yes, I do, because I know where I stand. Do I dare? Yes, I do, because I have my own plan. Do I dare? Yes, I do, because I know that I can. Do I dare? Do I dare? Yes, I do. Yes, I do, because I know where I stand. Do I dare? Yes, I do, because I have my own plan. Do I dare? Yes, I do, because I know that I can. Do I dare? Do I dare? Yes, I do. I dare. Thank you, we really want to thank you. THAKYO. Thank you, we really want to thank you. Thank you. You've been a star, you've been a real trooper. You've been so great, you've really been super. You've been so fast, you really want to live with THAKYO. Thank you, we really want to thank you. THAKYO. Thank you, we really want to thank you. Thank you. Thank you, we really want to thank you. Thank you, we really want to thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. O'Brien, and members of the board. Annually, the Goose Creek CISD Human Resources Department conducts a public hearing to request permission for a one-time payment of $500 for early notice of resignations or retirements for full-time teachers, nurses, librarians, and speech pathologists. This process assists the district with staffing needs for the upcoming school year. With your approval, the HR department can better plan for filling vacant positions, recruit qualified staff, and align staff due to shifting enrollments and opening of new campuses. If approved, the early notice time period will run from February the 2nd through Friday, March the 5th. That's the Friday before spring break. Last year, we had 70 employees take advantage of the early notice time period. I'll be happy to address any questions or concerns that you may have.
Just a reminder to the board of the primary purpose for early resignation notification enables HR to do what?
Be able to go ahead and fill those vacant positions and recruit highly qualified staff.
I think we'll open it up to the public for comments as well. There are no comments from the board. Thank you, Mr. Chapa.
Thank you, Mr. Chapa. Now we get a fun report. Is this 3B?
We have Ms. Jackson and Ms. Tilton will be presenting on the Texas Academic Performance Report, otherwise known as TAPER. believe everyone knows Ms. Tilton is the new Director of Accountability and Assessment.
It doesn't hurt. I'm sure.
And Ms. Jackson is our new Deputy Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction.
Okay, so this year's paper report doesn't have many changes due to us not doing testing for last year due to COVID. Most of the information is just the same based upon the 2018-19 paper report. Let's see. Okay, so basically every year TA puts out a report for every district and every campus in the state. And it comes out in two formats, one that is a building format and a PDF version, which is just has the bullet points of the report. And on the cover page, they basically give you a summary of how your district did and the accountability ratings, the special education determination. Accountability rating, it was not rated, declared state of disaster. Our special education, GCCISD 2020 needs intervention. ASVAB test is only reported in the districts and only reported the district did not offer the ASVAB and the distinction designations. So due to us not having any STAR data, things are, like I said, just are like they are in 2018, 2019 due to the cancellation. Let's see. All right, so they did use 2019-2020 data for attendance, graduation, and dropout rates, but the most recent data for these measures are from the 2018-2019 school year. Therefore, performance on these measures has been updated since the 2018-19 taper and is reported for the 2018-19 and 2017-18 years. The college career and military readiness, military is basically been suspended with CT coherent sequence, which will no longer count on this year's accountability. Let's see. All right. We made positive gains in CCMR with the CCMR graduates, college-ready graduates, and our career military graduates. We also made positive gains in the related indicators of TSIA. CT coherent sequence was our only dip, but that no longer counts or has been suspended. And the other two we went up in and completed and received credit for college prep courses in reading and math and SAT results. Other post-secondary indicators, we had gains with the exception of there was a slight dip in graduates who completed 1 year of higher ed without taking a remedial course. Huh? Oh, I see. Okay. Let's see, the most recent data for this information are from the 2019-2020 school year, the student information, staff information, and program information. So in 2019-2020, out of 23,850 students, our ethnic distribution, African American 15.4%, Hispanic 63.2%, white 17.4%, American Indian 0.4%, Asian 1.6%, Pacific Islander 0.1%, two or more races 2%, and then our economically disadvantaged 69.7%, English learners 18.5%, and at risk 53.8%. In our instructional program, CTE was 25.8%, gifted and talented 8%, and special ed 11.1%. Our student information, the retention rates for non-special ed were well below the state average, as well as in retention rates for special education were below the state average. Our staff information, we're extremely competitive in our teacher salary and we're above state average. Let's see. What else on that? Okay. And then our district accreditation status. Each year, TEA assigns one of the 4 accreditation statuses to each district in the state: accredited, accredited warrant, accredited probation, and not accredited revoked. And assigning accreditation status to district, TEA considers accountability, academic accountability ratings, financial accountability, data integrity, and program area deficiencies identified through results-driven accountability. The district's 2019-2020 accreditation status is not rated declared due to a state of disaster. And then it comes with a glossary, and if any resources are needed, you can contact my office.
Generally speaking, in a state of disaster, the scores roll forward from the previous year, except when you have a needs improvement, that rolls forward as well, is what I picked up from this report that you presented this evening. So the area that we have needs improvement in, special education, remained that. And as far as we know, the scores of a B for the district roll forward as well, until such time in which we have new data to counter that.
Correct.
Any questions from the Board of Trustees?
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Okay, back to you, Mr.
Madam
Chapa.
President, we're going to move on with recognitions and acknowledgments. And at this time, I'd like to bring Mr. J.P. Gromes with LAN up to the front, please.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We're here tonight to present a check to the Goose Creek Consolidated ISD Education Foundation. And during these times of COVID, we know it's difficult for students. We know it's difficult for districts. So we're very pleased to have the opportunity to continue our partnership with the Education Foundation and with the district, and are very pleased to be here to present with some of our team members a check to the district. So if it's all right with you, we'll come take a couple photos. All right, thank you.
Is Ms. Foster out there? Have Ms. Foster come in as well.
All right. Wow.
My eyes closed, and that's all I've got going right now. Don't leave them out. Trying to give that check away, y'all.
Yes, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
Madam President, our next recognition and acknowledgement is going to be presented by Ms. Gretchen Knowles from the County Commissioners Precinct 2.
Hi there, good evening. My name is Gretchen Knowles. I'm a community liaison with Commissioner Adrian Garcia's office. And I'm here on his behalf to recognize the school board for their hard work. And last month was our school board recognition month, so I've got a letter I'd like to read to all of you. Esteemed Goose Creek Consolidated Board of Trustees, January, as many know, is recognized as School Board Appreciation Month, and rightfully so. The mission of public schools is to meet the diverse educational needs of all children and to empower them to become competent, productive, and successful adults, ensuring that they are prepared to enter an ever-evolving workforce and to engage a global economy. Local school board members commit to children and believe that every child can be a successful learner. They work closely with educational institution staff, faculty, parents, and other community members to create the educational vision we want for our youth. The responsibility of ensuring the structure that provides a solid foundation for our school systems is not an easy one to bear. Those individuals who commit to shouldering that incredible task are worthy of commendation. The incredible commitment of advocating for public education and acting as liaisons between the districts and the public to communicate needs and expectations is a hefty task. We at Harris County Precinct 2 would like to join other school districts across the state to honor you for your dedication and service in this area for years to come. I'm proud of all schools and educators, but I take particular pride in those of you who work with and support the students and parents of Precinct 2 to see them become the future leaders in thought and in action of our community. Thank you for your service and leadership, and I'm here to support you. Best regards, Adrian Garcia, Harris County Precinct 2 Commissioner. Okay, hang on. Okay. Keep growing, giants.
Okay, yeah, we gotta get that rid of it too. Yeah, Howard's still. There we go. Yeah. Are you ready? Okay, I'll take a different setting. I'll look better. You can do that, yeah. Okay, you ready? Oh, now. O'Brien suddenly got 5 feet tall. Okay, there we go. I think we got, well, okay, wait a minute. Oh, yes, please. Thank you very much. Hope to see you all soon.
Thank you, Ms. Knowles. Our last two presentations will be under the direction of Dr. McCall, and he will be making those presentations.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. O'Brien. Today I have the distinct pleasure of announcing some of our students who have performed exceptionally well in our fine arts groups. So I will start with our Texas Educational Theater Association Theater Fest 2020 state winners. The following Goose Creek Memorial High School students competed and won the following awards at the Texas Educational Theater Association Theater Fest 2020 virtual competition in September. Delilah Akers, 10th grade, Properties Design winner. Dylan Hawkins, 11th grade, Sound Design winner. Isabel Badal, 12th grade, Short Form Playfest winner, The Night Shift. Let's give our winners a round of applause, please.
Get it? Gotta do it again, Mom.
Better on the background. You want to?
The following Goose Creek Memorial High School students competed and won the following awards at the Texas Thespian State Convention held virtually this school year. These students qualified to compete at the National Thespian Festival in June, traditionally held in Lincoln, Nebraska, but virtually this year. Emma Tompkins, 12th grade, Stage Management National Qualifier. Shania Hughes, 11th grade, Marketing Design National Qualifier. And Dylan Hawkins, 11th grade, Solo Monologue National Qualifier. Let's give them a round of applause again. Congratulations to those students. They are under the direction of Miss Alicia Green, the head theater director at Goose Creek Memorial, and Mr. Jeremy Ashland, the assistant theater director at Goose Creek Memorial. Next, we would like to recognize those students who are a part of the Texas Dance Educators Association All-State Team. 3 Goose Creek CISD high school students were chosen to participate in the Texas Dance Educators Association All-State Dance Team at the TDEA convention in January. The TDEA All-State Dance Team is comprised of dancers representing schools from across the state of Texas. All-state dancers participate in an exciting convention experience that includes dance workshops, leadership training, master classes, and learning about college dance programs and teams, which of course this year will take place virtually. The Goose Creek CISD Fine Arts Department is proud to announce our TDEA All-State Dance Team members. Riley Kimball, 12th grade from Sterling High School, Head Director Lori Alexander, Assistant Director Joanna Isis. Raquel Ergin, 12th grade, Robert E. Lee High School Band, Head Director Robert E. Lee High School, Head Director Alex Henriksen, Assistant Dance Director Jamie Minyard. Eliana Mack, 12th grade, Goose Creek Memorial High School, co-director Larissa Coy, and also co-director Marissa Coy.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have one more photo, yes. Congratulations to all of our winners. Great job.
Okay, that concludes our recognitions and acknowledgments. We're moving on to agenda item 5, citizens participation. Ms. Garcia, do we have anyone signed up this evening? No one signed up for citizens participation, so we will move along to agenda item number 6, approval of minutes. We have on the list tonight for January the 11th, 2021 regular board meeting. Do I have a motion?
I move we approval. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Laredo and a second by Mr. Clem to approve the minutes from January 11th, 2021 regular board meeting. Any questions or comments at this time concerning those minutes? So all in favor, please raise your right hand or say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? I believe one absent, so 6-4, motion passes. Moving on to agenda item 7, discussion items. A, superintendent's reports. Dr. O'Brien, you may take the floor.
President Woods, we have for us the superintendent's report tonight. The first one will be from our facilities and construction department, and you will see a sample of the new project management tool, which has made things much more efficient for the department. With us this evening, you have Dr. McCall and Brenda Garcia.
Good evening again, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. O'Brien. Certainly glad to be with you this evening to talk about our new project management tool, accompanied by our Director of Facilities Planning and Construction, Ms. Brenda Garcia. All right, so the program that we use for project management and facilities and construction is called Project Mates. This was a tool that was purchased right at the start of the 2019 bond work. Our previous project management system, after speaking with Ms. Garcia about it, one of the reasons we looked into this program is because we had issues of efficiency. It was very antiquated and paper-based, and so when we're talking about purchase requisitions, any sort of paperwork that needed to be completed, it was filed away. And so as a result of that, we took up a lot of real estate space with filing cabinets and things of that nature, so it just required more physical space. And then we had an inadequate project documents archiving, which we know is very important as we're going through these very extensive projects. We need to be able to find those documents as we're opening these schools and have to continue to service them. And so in looking at Project Mates, we were able to develop the purpose of becoming more organized, certainly increasing our efficiency, financial accuracy, which is very important. There is a component to this tool that really provides detailed information on budget, and how we record that information in the system reflects on whether or not as a project we are on budget, under budget, whatever the status of that is. And so we work very closely with the finance office, as well as working with other entities like purchasing to make sure that we are on target there. And then simple archiving, which we know is very important for the sake of the work that's being done throughout this bond. So Project Mace is a construction program management software, and there are a couple of parts to it that we really are thankful for. This is just a snippet of what the system can do, but it really helps with document management, cost management, workflow management, which reduces people doing double work. It's very intuitive to make sure that those who have been assigned a specific task are held accountable to complete that task. And then also analytics and reporting, which is very important to the work that we do, especially as we're going throughout the project and providing updates to our community at large. What you will see here is just a 1-minute video, just giving you a summary of what the system can do. And then after that, Ms. Garcia will go directly in the tool to show you how we use it.
I mute it? Can't hear the sound.
I think I can go through.
Mute your microphone.
Can we get to that? Okay.
Dr. O'Brien.
Green, make your microphone red.
Oh.
From A to Z. What does this mean?
I'll go into the good stuff. Apologize for that. There we go. Okay, as Dr. McCall mentioned, so there's a lot of benefits to the project software itself, and just want to highlight how it's benefiting us to this point. And so a few things that I want to talk about is the capacity that it has to manage several projects, all from one existing location. Currently in the system, we have 18 2019 bond projects in it now that we're managing, and we also have 14 non-bond projects in there. So it's not intended just for the bond work. It's for all capital improvement work that we do in the district. Additionally, we are able to access live data from any location. Obviously, our desktops, but all of our project managers, their iPads, their cell phones, if there are any approvals that need to occur, it's, in your hands reach, and we're able to do that very efficiently because it is a cloud-based system. Team collaboration is extremely important for this project, for this tool, and it allows us to collaborate with our entire team, and team meaning internally the project team, the GCCISD staff, the architects, the engineers, the contractor, all of our vendors, including we have a component that's also interdepartmental collaboration with the maintenance department, with TMS, and so they're able to also view approvals in the system and have access to all of the projects. It's also, because of that, it's streamlining the workflow. The efficiency of it is extremely important. We're able to approve documents in a very timely fashion, where no different than you have our district teams. Our district. What is our district? TMA? No. Teams. Yes, our district teams. Software where it's an approval-based system, and it goes from one person to another directly. And so you're not having to wait around to do all these approvals. There's not days or weeks, and sometimes these approvals happen really quickly within one day. And so it's creating a lot of efficiency there. And again, the organization of it, and I'll show you here in just a bit, every
project is bundled separately. And so all of the documents that pertain to that project are in labeled folders. All of the financial information is together. All of the project drawings are in one location, and so it's really organized. And another thing that Dr. McCall had mentioned, the financial accuracy. In the 2013 bond, we really relied on the team software with the district. And so now we have this that's intended specifically to track the projects. And so we're able to compare on a daily basis internally what do our numbers say and what does teams say. And so we work with the business office almost on a daily basis and be able to cross-compare those financial accuracies there. And then simple archiving. At the end of a project, we'll be able to, in essence, just bundle all of the documents that are in a project, and we can download it and save it even off of the cloud if we need to for digital archiving. And so it's really become a very efficient tool for us. And I'm going to show you quickly an example of a project. So this is the tool itself. I'm going to go into projects. Close this out. So as you can see here, just a list of all of the projects. I have access to all of these. Each team member, depending on what project they're assigned to, their homepage might look a little bit different. I'm going to click into one of these projects just to give you an idea of all of the information that it can contain. So we'll go to junior school number 6. This is known as the dashboard, and so as you log into this project, you're able to see the location, what's the weather like that day, and this is useful for our project team, the contractors, to log their reports on a daily basis. They can use this tool. And so we also talked about having this for the life of the project in its existence. And so one of the items that some of the items that you can do with this software is track every step of the project. And so, for example, when we start a project, we start in the planning phase. And a lot of times, there's so many surveys and reports. You can view here topographical surveys. This is before sometimes we even have the architect on board, or we'll do environmental surveys when we purchase a piece of property. All of that information lives in this section of planning for a project. Traffic impact analysis, utility studies, so a lot of those items are held in the planning. And then we would probably move on to procurement. And so in procurement, when we hire the architect for that project, all of their related documents exist within there, all of their contracts and information pertinent to that project and that architect, the professional service. Eventually, when we hire the contractor, then that information lives within this project as well. We'd move on to the design phase, and you can see you might be able to recognize some of these design phases: programming, schematic design, design development. And so all of those documents at each stage are residing in this particular tab. And so it makes it really easy for us to go back and look at what occurred at 75%. That was a deliverable from the architect to us. And so if for any reason we need to go back and review that, I can go to the 75% drawings, quickly click on that. Sometimes they're very large, so it'll download the file for me. I'm able to open it and then view that design set at the 75% mark. And so it's extremely helpful when in the past we've had drawings that have been updated, again, very cumbersome. And so we don't have to keep all of those large sets anymore. We can just kind of keep what's buttoned up at the end, the as-built, and not every single step, but it's here for us to access and for everyone to access that's on the team. We can move on to the construction portion here. And again, The final drawings that are issued to the city for construction reside in here. Any lab and testing reports are in here. I want to point out, this is where in the past it gets so cumbersome with all of the testing and reports, and we want to keep track of all of those. And so, for example, all of our concrete pours that we do, we require materials testing for that. And so every pour, material tests are done and reports are created. So if you can see just the amount of reports that exist, it's quite a lot. And so in the past, those were paper copies. And so we've been able to contain them in one location. And so also just want to quickly mention cost tracking. There's so many tools that are available to us. And I think even as we continue to use it, we'll be able to create additional reports as we work more with the business office. And so just quick snapshots of an overall budget report. We can click in here and find who are the vendors that are related to this particular project that we have contracts with or invoices to encumbrances, the architects, the engineers. It's a nice way to get a quick overview of that. And so, again, the final, I think the most beneficial thing really is just tracking it and being able to access it. And we've become very efficient. We've got, as you can see, a lot of projects. And so to be able to manage all of those from one location has been great for us.
I don't know about you all, but what I heard her say was she no longer has to wait for the folder on Dr. O'Brien's desk to be signed and
I
sent back
have one
to
for
her.
you right back there, sir.
So going into the 2019 bond, one of the charges of the Board of Trustees was to improve our plans for maintenance and operations costs, as well as facilities and conditions assessment capability. Well, the plans were in place. What both of my department heads shared was it wasn't as much the plan as it was the tracking of the plan. So I think with Dr. Price's presentation last month with eWorks and finding out from he and his team about the efficiency of eWorks and how assignments can now, they can be tracked through GPS and things of that nature. And now tonight with this, you see that we've stepped up in the world of technology. And I'll say this, it even crosses over to curriculum instruction, our special education department. Again, one of the departments we've really focused in and targeted on efficiency, and discovered that that also was a paper trail. Carrying around large binders from campus to campus to campus turned into a nightmare in which we were able to convert to e-files, and we're in the process of completing that. So that efficiency will also benefit us in more than one way, but primarily what I heard was time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we need it.
So any questions from the board to our presentation?
And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, we also, as you can see, track photos. So that's a really good thing. We can go back to a certain timestamp and figure out what was going on with the project at that time.
And with the weather component, seriously, you can track whether or not it's a good day to pour or not.
Sorry.
You can back off the schedule of a scheduled pour of concrete and schedule it for the following day or 2 days later based upon this report.
I'm the secretary you needed.
No, she can't be replaced.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Thank you,
Sure,
Dr. McCall.
thank you so much.
Appreciate your presentation this evening.
So slide over to where you.
Hey, we only have
that's
two
right.
more. No, three. Dr. McCall, you don't have to leave.
Yes, I do need to get the cheer sponsors from the.
Are you sure? Our next presentation will be the junior and high school cheer program guidelines. I'll let Dr. McCall introduce his guest speakers that will be joining him this evening to present to you just an update on our constitutions and things of that nature. Ladies, welcome.
I'm saying this for the third time now. Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, Dr. O'Brien. Certainly glad to be with you this evening to discuss just some general information about our cheer guidelines as we are preparing. Believe it or not, we're 1 foot in this school year and 1 foot into next school year, and we know that's how it works in education, and so we're planning Have the pleasure of having Ms. Darlington here. Ms. Darlington is the cheer sponsor for Highlands Junior School. Yes, please wait. And Ms. Fontenot is also here. She is the cheer sponsor from Sterling High School. And so we have a representative from each level that has a cheer program. So just our roadmap for this evening, we're going to just briefly review the article topics that are in the GCCISD cheerleader guidelines. And I'm happy to report to you that we have one document of guidelines for junior school and one document for high school. So everyone works collaboratively in the cheer department across the district to make sure that those guidelines are consistent across the board. We will then identify and discuss recommended changes to the 21-22 guidelines through the sponsors and their feedback. And then we'll also look at some changes under consideration for the 21-22 school year. Just based on reaching out to legal counsel, you always want to make sure that you have support there based on the guidelines that you are looking to put in place. We will spend some time talking about financial responsibility of students and families who are involved in these programs. And then we'll give some brief information about tryouts and then, of course, entertain any questions specifically about cheer. So in the cheer guidelines for junior school and high school, they are pretty lengthy documents. And so I just wanted to take a moment just to talk about the different parts of the cheer guidelines that are there. Of course, it talks about the purpose. It gives tryout qualifications and eligibility information, procedures relating to tryouts that are very important to those students who are interested. The judging of contestants, that information is present. How do you maintain membership and what's required of you based on your conduct and any sort of character standards that are in place that represent what these organizations should be. Responsibilities and duties once you are a member of the team, what are you responsible for? Any sort of competition squad details. As you know, we like for our cheer teams to compete, and so there's another level of applying for that level of competition, and so our cheer sponsors were sure to include that information. And then also leadership opportunities, what's expected if you happen to become a head cheerleader and what's required of you there. Some sponsor recommended guideline changes for the junior school that we were able to pull from the documents is a couple of things. One, the demerit system. One particular offense that was added to the demerit system, which means that a student can earn demerits for any sort of behavior that is identified as being inappropriate, being a part of the team. The unauthorized use of a personal cell phone during games and practices. Of course, this is a safety measure. When you're in cheer, of course, you have those students who participate as the base, and you have flyers. See, I've learned some things in the cheer world, but we certainly want to make sure that students are paying attention, and so the unauthorized use of personal cell phones is very important. Cheerleaders are required to demonstrate mastery of routines prior to the game. That's also a safety matter. We have to make sure that the students are prepared for those routines, especially if there are any stunts. So they have to demonstrate that they have mastery of that routine. And at the sponsor's discretion, they can be told that they will not participate due to not mastering the routine in a timely manner. For high school, there's some information recommended guideline changes, and some of these things have been dealt with over the past couple of years, and they've really wanted to drive the point through their guidelines. But really addressing conduct eligibility differences between ISS and OSS, in-school suspension or out-of-school suspension, or if a student for a particular offense has an alternative placement at point. Another big thing to look at the high school, and I know this came at the recommendation of the cheer sponsors, is that cheer years of service points is something where if students were involved with cheer in the past, they received a certain amount of points just for continuing to be involved as a years of service mechanism. One of the things that we're looking at doing is removing that clause so that all students, when they're interested in applying or trying out for the cheer program, they're all starting out at the same level. What this does is not only increases competition, but it keeps students on their toes to give their best. And the goal of our programs through the tryout process is, of course, to have those students who will represent at a certain skill level. And so that's one area that will be addressed in this particular guideline year. Judging of candidates, any sort of temporary physical injury explanation or clause. If there's a situation where a student may be injured, it's a temporary injury, but it may prohibit them from flipping or anything that's required for the tryouts. They are able to use any sort of video footage from the previous season as long as it's approved by the sponsor. And once again, I want to emphasize that it's a temporary injury. It's not something that they will be out for the entire season. So it's expected to heal, but just during the time of trials, they're not able to complete all the tasks that are required. Social media standards, as we know, cyberbullying is something that we have to deal with in all schools. It doesn't matter, across the United States and beyond. And so social media standards have increased. We're really paying attention to not only if you post it, but do you comment on it? Do you repost it? Do you retweet it? Whatever social media platform you're using. Are you liking it, loving it, all of those things? And if you're showing that you agree with something that's considered inappropriate, there can be consequences for that behavior on social media. And then with cheer class requirements, grades, and scheduling, I know in speaking with Ms. Fontenot here, one of the things that they're really looking to do is develop a stronger relationship with Lee College. For those students who are taking dual credit courses, as you know, they are protected with their grades, but we have a responsibility to make sure that those students are successful in order for them to participate in these programs. And so between the counseling staff at our high schools and the campus administration, we're working on developing a system where we can better not only track but also support students that are in those dual credit classes to make sure that they are passing, and we're doing those grade checks every 6 weeks. And then similar to the junior school, they also added the unauthorized use of personal cell phones during games and practices as a safety measure. So some changes for consideration after speaking to legal counsel. One of the things that she looked through our guidelines and referenced a point about the cheerleader term of service and eligibility for future tryouts. One of the things that it states in both is that if a student commits a certain offense that is considered immediate dismissal, or maybe they've reached the maximum amount of demerits and they are removed from the team, then they are not eligible to try out for the following school year. So not only are they removed from the team, but they're also ineligible for tryouts for the next school year. She's giving us some information on that because that's something that we want to certainly look at and just kind of get a feel for what's happening across the state with other cheer programs. I know that a lot of cheer programs are kind of getting away from that. That was a standard. Let me put that out there. That was something that even I dealt with as a high school principal. But now things are beginning to change a little bit where maybe there's some opportunity for redemption for these students just a little bit sooner, depending on the level of offense. And so we are currently working with legal counsel on that. There has not been a formal decision, but we are working on it expeditiously because, as you'll see in a couple of slides, the cheer tryouts will be coming up within the next month. And so we certainly want to provide guidance for our cheer sponsors before they begin having those parent meetings. For the financial responsibility for our junior school students who are interested in cheer, there is a financial responsibility of $1,000 to $1,300. And so we know that with cheer, it can be really expensive, especially for our families that may be dealing with some financial matters, especially as it relates to COVID. And so, and speaking with our cheer sponsors, they were able to share some wonderful ideas and things that they've been doing as far as fundraising to help students and families cover some of the costs that are associated with joining cheer. And then they've also been more flexible than in years past when it comes to payment plans and working with families. I know specifically Ms. Fontenot shared with me that, there's a parent, whenever she gets paid, she's just bringing little by little just until she can get the fees paid for. And so just really being a little bit more flexible. And I take my hat off to them for recognizing that that's a need in our community and beyond. And so they're really working to not only beef up the fundraising efforts, but to also support parents with more flexible terms for payment plans. At the high school level, a little bit different. Depending on if the students have been involved with cheer in the past, and they may have a lot of the supplies that they need already, but that price range can be anywhere from $500 to $1,500. Once again, payment plans are in place, certainly being more flexible with our families. And then there are fundraising opportunities, and those fundraising dollars go back to the students. It always goes back to the students. It's not going into a cheer account at that particular point in time. It's all about helping the students and reducing those costs. Some of the things that the costs include, because I know when we see those numbers, we're thinking, what in the world costs that much money to be involved? But we're looking at summer camps, uniforms, pom-poms, warm-up suits, bows, shoes, and I am extremely scared because I have a daughter. But these are all the things that, families have to be responsible for when their child is involved in cheer at the junior school or high school level. So at this time, I will turn it over to our sponsors here to talk a little bit about tryout information, and of course, be able to answer any questions you may have about that. Turn the mic on green.
That means it's on?
Yes, yours fine.
Okay, so I know it's Sterling, and I think I also spoke to the league coach. Our tryouts will be March 1st through 5th, the week before spring break. We have a mandatory pre-tryout meeting with a parent the Thursday night before the meeting where we go over expected behaviors, responsibilities, time commitments, financial responsibilities, and then we go in depth about all of our tryout requirements because they are a little bit different from the requirements for the rest of the year. And then we post our results the Friday of the tryout that night on our campus website. And that's about it.
Yeah, so our tryouts run pretty much the same. We always do ours after high school, so they're doing theirs the week before spring break, so ours will be the week after spring break. And we do this so that, if you have a parent who has a daughter in junior high and they have a daughter in high school, they're not running around crazy trying to get to 2 different tryouts on time because they can't be late. And so ours will be March 19th, and then same thing, they'll know by that Friday evening if they made the team or not. And we do the same. We have a mandatory parent meeting. Mine will be the Thursday before their tryouts. And we go over all of the guidelines, the financial responsibility, everything before tryouts and the tryout requirements. And then after they make the team, we have another meeting going more in depth of all of that stuff. So the only thing that's new with junior high this year is that we have the new school. And so we'll be basically doing 2 tryouts in one. So the girls will tell us, I'm going to be zoned to green or I'm going to be zoned to this junior high. So we'll put their scores in 2 different spots. And we're like all in contact together to figure out the top 16 for that school for them. And that's pretty much it.
We'll certainly appreciate the forward thinking and preparing for our new junior school. So that's all we have for you, just a brief overview of just some of the changes for the guidelines, just kind of giving general information about where we are and possible recommendations that's up for review. Do you have any questions for us at this time?
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just as a cheer parent, for the one of the things I saw, the cost of the junior school cheerleader was quite a bit higher than the minimum cost of the high school cheerleaders. But one of the things I know that the high schools do that the junior schools don't are, at the junior schools, they have to purchase their uniforms. So I don't know if it's ever been considered for the junior schools to maybe do the uniforms like the high schools do.
So we have discussed that. The only problem with that in junior high is the girls, they can try out the end of their 6th grade year. Mm-hmm. By the time they're in 8th grade, they've grown so much that it kind of becomes a problem. Because even from 6th grade to when they come back to school in September, it's kind of like, I don't remember that skirt being that short. Mm-hmm. But it's like they grow so much in their 3 years of junior high. So that has been really the only setback to keep us from doing that.
Okay. Another thing at junior school cheerleader, and it wasn't at your school, but one of the things that kind of was tough for us was that camp was out of town, like in Dallas or San Marcos, and we were responsible for the transportation to and from. I know that there are some in Galveston that I believe you all did, which would be much more convenient for parents. Or I don't know if it's ever been considered for the middle schools to maybe have their own camp because we have 6, we're going to have 6 middle schools now. So,
Yes,
I think
and
that's a pretty good sized camp.
We've discussed that before too, and I think last year we even talked about maybe we should do a home camp altogether. The only thing with that is it's not as competitive. The girls, when we go to a big camp, like a big UCA camp, they get to see the high schools and they get to see like, oh, this is what we're supposed to look like. So, and they learn a lot more because they get, there's more coaches and things at the bigger camps to do that one-on-one time, and they get more private coaching with stunts versus just learning cheers. And they get more of the stunt safety at the away camps. But yeah, no, I do understand where you're coming from. The ones in Galveston, we were actually able to carpool with the girls, and it cut on the cost a lot. But we have a
and Galveston's only an hour away,
right.
so I can take her and then come back to work.
Right.
Easily. I can't really when I have to take her to Dallas. But okay. So, but can you hire those companies to come do camp?
They do come. It's just they have a brochure. I can send it over if you need to, but it's just different. Like their home camps are run completely differently from their away camps.
Okay.
I got a couple of questions. On injuries, who makes the judgment on injuries?
Doctor. They have to provide a doctor's note.
Okay, is that someone that Universal deal with the girls, or is your own individual doctor?
Individual doctors.
Okay.
They just have like medical release forms that they have to fill out.
In the beginning?
In the beginning.
And then coming back, they have to have the same? Okay. Now, on grades, do y'all have a certain GPA they have to stay at in order to be able to be on the team?
So, yes, to try out, you have to have an overall 80 for the fall semester. And then in the fourth 6 weeks, you have to have an overall 80 as well as no grade below a 70. And so maintaining, they do fall under the same UIL guidelines. So if they're in an honors course and they happen to fail, they're put on probation. If they fail, regardless, they're put on probation. But if you're in an honors course, you do have the ability to apply for a waiver. And if they have the waiver, they're allowed to participate if they have above a 60 to a 69. And then otherwise, if they're in just a regular on-level course, or if they have below a 60 in an honors level course, then they're on probation and they cannot participate until the next report or progress report, actually.
So the waiver is sort of like on probation until you get your grade up?
The next progress report. So if they fail this 6 weeks, then the next progress report they have to be passing.
So like no pass, no play.
No pass, no play.
Okay.
Same thing.
It's the same guidelines.
It's the same
for the
UIL
athletics
guidelines.
programs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What types of we was talking about problems that the girls get in that would disqualify them? Is it fighting on campus, or?
Well, yeah, if they were to get in a fist fight, they're automatically dismissed from the squad. And then there's different things. Like I know for us, if they get ISS, it's like 4 demerits a day that they're in ISS. So they get 15 demerits and they're kicked off. So 3 days of ISS, you're almost there.
So you don't have no probation period for these girls?
Not for conduct, no, not for discipline. Mm-mm.
And is that a similar program to what other athletics and such programs? I mean, as far as the demerits, so many demerits and you're off the basketball team or you're off the math team or whatever. Is that pretty much uniform across the board for extracurricular programs, UIL programs in the district?
I can't say that.
I'm not sure.
So each program would kind of have their own set of guidelines for how much trouble you can get away with.
As far as I know, the cheer guidelines, as far as conduct, I mean, I cheered for Sterling 10 years ago, but I think that it's been the same.
Would you say yours is stricter than
Probably
others?
the most strict on
Probably,
campus.
yeah.
And due to the fact that you have fewer team members probably too. So higher standards.
And it's just higher standards.
So on personal cell phones, what is the penalty for, say a girl didn't turn the cell phone off and it rained during practice or something?
Well, it's not so much that it accidentally rang. That it's more of like you're texting on your phone when we're stretching and getting ready for practice.
Oh, okay.
That's the
So
problem.
Yeah.
if you got a cell phone, you don't need to bring it on the field.
Yeah, you don't need to bring it. Yeah.
Okay. And we was talking about this cost and being able to pay part of it, you know. Now, do the girls, as far as raising money, is that their own responsibility, or do you do it as a team to help fund like a?
Do we do this team?
We offer a fundraiser at usually at our post-tryout meeting, actually, and it is an optional fundraiser. It's if they want to do it. So if their parent wants to just pay their invoice in increments, they can choose so. But we always offer the fundraiser, and that money, any money that they raise, goes directly to their invoice.
So it goes into their account.
Yes, to whatever they owe, and that's what we hold. We have a big fundraiser, which we didn't get to do it last year because of COVID. But in the years past, I've done a carnival with the girls, so every girl was responsible for their booth.
Right.
And the whatever money we raised, it was split evenly between the girls towards their payments.
Now, when the girls go to camp, do the parents supply the transportation, or do we use school vehicles?
It's different. I think y'all get.
We have been going to Galveston for the past a long time, and right now the parents take them and pick them up. Usually, especially pick them up. I know when they've had farther camps in the past, they've taken a bus or charter up there, and then parents take them home. That's because the last day is like the competition day, so many parents choose to come and watch the competition. So that's kind of how that got started. But a lot of our girls, if their most parents choose to drop them off, they want to take them. But if they don't, we have a permission slip where they can choose to ride to and from with another cheerleader whose parent is dropping them off.
Okay, that's all.
How do you select the judges for the tryouts?
Right now, they have to be a hired judge, and we try to get UCA judges or NCA judges if possible. It's sometimes really hard to find people to do it, especially right now with the process of becoming a vendor. But looking for people with the most experience and who also have no relation or relationship with any, like have known anyone on the squad. So after our pre-tryout meeting, we have a sign-in sheet. I take the sign-in sheet and I show my panel of judges, do you know any of these candidates? And if you do know any of them, you can't be.
Well, the only time we hear from your cheerleaders is if they don't like the way tryouts went, or if they don't get along.
It's always hired judges.
So, and I'm old enough to have done baton twirlers, so it's it's the same exact thing. So I understand what you're going through, but you always have to make sure the appearance is on the up and up in that part of the process. And I'm probably speaking out of line, but maybe we could look into those judges being sole source vendors, and because they have an expertise that no one else has, and might be easier to get some of those.
Get them approved for the vendor
list.
Get
them approved because they have a service that other folks don't offer. Is that a possibility?
Y'all have used collegiate level judges before?
Yes, if we can get them. We've had professional cheerleaders or college cheerleaders, UCA, NCA staff.
Yes.
And the smartest thing I've heard y'all say is you post on the weekend, because by Monday it's all okay.
Yes.
Thank you for being here tonight.
After the phones are turned off.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Post it and then turn everything off and walk away.
Go out of town.
I'm sorry, did you just
Thank you so very much. Very informative presentation.
For the presentation, absolutely. And good luck. Great season coming.
Our next superintendent's report is regarding rezoning, and we have with us Christy Leith and Matt Bollinger. They'll be covering both demographic studies and the public forums they've had recently. Welcome.
Okay, good evening, President Woods, school board members, Dr. O'Brien. We want to share some information regarding the rezoning process, so we'll go ahead and begin. that piece, we want to first of all revisit our objectives for rezoning. And so we had general objectives that we presented a few months ago, and then also specific rezoning objectives particular to the rezoning effort for Green Junior School. And so for the general objectives for rezoning, there's several guidelines for the district. First of all, we rezone in a way that makes sure that we're being efficient and smart with our facilities and with our resources. Typically, rezoning is a result of overcrowding at campuses. We're building schools because we're at capacity or over capacity. We also want to make sure that when we build new schools that we're planning for future growth and that our rezoning boundaries make sense. Also, we rezone based off of proximity from a residence to a campus. And so those typically are why we rezone, and we always want to make sure that we keep the students' best interest in mind. For this rezoning effort, we were rezoning, of course, for Green Junior School, and as we redraw attendance zones for Green, that also impacts the other junior schools, so that was the primary goal here. Also, the rezoning effort achieved a pure feeder pattern from the junior school to the high school, and so both options that we presented back in December achieved that goal, where we had two, for every one high school, we had 2 junior schools that fed directly into that high school. Also, we wanted to make sure that we align and look at campus capacity at all junior schools so that it's balanced. And again, to make sure that we're serving the educational needs of our students. And then we'll also present a grandfathering process as well. Here's a snapshot of our district rezoning task force, just the process that we went through. So we met 3 times beginning in early November through early December. And we looked at various options. We worked with PASA, Stacy Tapera, to look at, again, various zoning options. I think we looked at 8 or 9 different options in total. And then we provided a board update right before holiday break on December 14th. And then we also opened up a community survey. So if you remember, based off that presentation, we expanded the timeline. So from December 18th to January 15th, almost a month, we had an online survey available for citizens to respond to, giving us feedback on their preference on the 2 options. We had option A and option B. We also provided 2 public forums in January 12th and 14th. And then based off the feedback that we received from the citizens, we met one more time on January 21st as a district task force just to review the data, to look at the community input, and then to make a recommendation to the board. And so that's where we're here tonight. Christy Leaf is going to walk us through the recommended option. I do want to show you real quick. This is our current zoning map for the junior schools. So you can see that there are 5 junior schools, 5 colors here on the map. And then Green Junior School is north of I-10, located right here where my cursor is. And so that's where the majority of the planning units will be impacted with the rezoning effort.
Next one. Okay. Good evening. Based on community input, we're recommending tonight option B to you. And that's what you see on the screen right now. As Matt said, we have pure feeder patterns now to the high schools. The high school boundaries did not have to be moved or changed a bit in order for this to happen. So Highlands and Green, of course, will be going to GCM. Gentry and Cedar Bayou will feed into Ross S. Sterling, and Horace Mann and Baytown Junior will feed into Lee. What you'll see in this slide on the left-hand side, that's actually our current zone feature. As you'll see those white lines around the planning units, those are the planning units that are impacted by this rezoning process. On the right side, you'll see those same planning units laid upon on top of the option B. So as you can see on the left-hand side, you have that cursor? Oh, no, a pointer. Okay. The large, I would say the light blue area, Baytown Junior, you have several planning units that will be moved to Highlands now. And then, of course, several units that did attend Gentry will now obviously feed into Green Junior School. There's one planning unit that will be moved from Cedar Bayou into Gentry. And then down at the bottom, you'll see some planning units being moved from Horace Mann Junior School to Baytown Junior School. This is a snippet of a table that I think that you're provided with in your handout. It was also online that the public got to look at, and it simply showed this particular option, the planning units that would be moved, the developments that corresponded to those planning units, and it showed which campus they were actually attending now and which campus they would be moved to in option B. This is the data from actually our current zones. If we did nothing, if you look at the fall of 2021, the capacity, I'd like you to look at it in regards to especially Baytown Junior, Gentry Junior, and Highlands Junior. You can see that beginning next year we would be over capacity in those areas. And if you take a look at the next slide, with the zoning process, you'll see the capacity now for each junior school in the 80s, beginning with next year. And you can see that as it progresses through the next 5 years, where each campus is projected to be. Okay.
Okay, so we wanted to talk a little bit about the community feedback that we received. And so again, we had an online survey that we had on our website for about a month, and also we did conduct 2 public forums. So the online survey, we felt like we had pretty good participation on this. We had almost 900 participants respond to the survey. You can see that there wasn't an overwhelming response between option A and option B. The option B was favored slightly more at 52% compared to 47.9% for option A. So I wanted to point that out. Okay, this is going to get into the weeds a little bit, but you have a handout that shows the planning units that were impacted from option B. Okay. So what we did, and the district task force spent some time looking at this data, for the planning units highlighted in blue. So there's 4 planning units highlighted in blue. Those were planning units that were very that had high levels of participation on the survey. So, for example, if you look at that second blue one, Bray Meadows, Preston Place, Springfield Estates, we had 83 of the almost 900, 83 responses came from those planning units. So if they're in blue, they had a higher level of response, probably over 20. However, I highlighted in blue because these planning units were not impacted by the rezoning. So if they're in blue, whatever school they were for option A, they were also for the same school in option B. So that's interesting to note that they gave us a preference on the survey, but it did not change where they were zoned, if that makes sense. So for example, Springfield and Springfield Estates, again, had high levels of participation, but they're going to Green Junior School for both options, okay? For the 2 in green, I highlighted those in green because those were 2 planning units that had high levels of responses that were impacted. So, for example, Bay River Colony, I'm going to show you when we pull out just that neighborhood, out of the 900 responses, or almost 900 responses, 127 came from this neighborhood. And you can see that their preference, 91%, preferred option B. And so the district task force looked at that data and considered it. And to give you one more example, Meadow Lake Village had a total of 30 responses. So not as many as the first neighborhood I showed you, but still most neighborhoods had 1 or 2 or 3 responses. And so this was a higher response. And they about almost 77%, 76.7% preferred option B from that neighborhood as well. We had 2 public forums. They were not well attended. We had very low attendance at the public forums. And so in the main feedback that were received, particularly at the first one, they were interested in the grandfathering process. So those were the questions that we received at the public forum. And so we wanted to talk a little bit about that real quick. So our recommended grandfathering process is that if a student is a current 7th grader, then they may opt to remain at their current campus their 8th grade year, provided that they have their own transportation. So if I'm a student at Highlands Junior School my 6th grade year and my 7th grade year, we would want to give that student or that parent the option to, and if they're rezoned to a different school, most likely Green, because of where it's located, then they do have the option to remain at that campus. And so that's the grandfathering process. And Christy will talk to us about the timeline and also talk a little bit about how parents can apply for that grandfathering option.
Okay. I think you have the full timeline in your handout. We'll just talk about from today forward, the timeline. February 3rd, based on your decision tonight, letters will be sent out to those students, the parents of those students who will be rezoned. And of course, that's for our current 5th through 7th grade students. From February 3rd through the 19th, that's when we will be collecting through an electronic link that will be embedded in the letter and the message that goes out, that current 7th graders, if they wish to grandfather and stay at their own home campus, noting that they would have to, the parents would have to provide transportation, then we'll gather those names at that point in time. And obviously from the 22nd through the 26th, we'll be compiling that grandfathering information. March 22nd is slated for our junior school principals to send what we're calling goodbye letters to the students who will be leaving their campus due to rezoning. And then March 29th is slated for a welcome letter from the principals to those students who they will be receiving the following year due to rezoning. And then from April 12th through June 11th, we've drafted that time for E.F. Green's new principal to schedule some on-site meetings to talk with the students that will be coming to E.F. Green, and possibly to also to provide some short videos to help engage and begin the school culture that way. Any questions?
I just have a quick question. What if my son or daughter is a 7th grader at Highlands Junior High right now, and I have a son or daughter that's in 6th grade as well, and my 7th grader wants to grandfather over? Is there an if-then? That way I'm not having 2 children at 2 different junior highs.
Based on past precedents, that's not, you're in a situation where you have 2 children. If I understand your question correctly, one's a 7th grader, the younger sibling is a 6th grader. So as the proposal is right now, it would be just the 7th grader would remain.
Wanted to clarify that. Well, my kids are in elementary school, but
okay.
I feel like there should be a if-then to that. But
and I think there has been for siblings. That was the if-then, was if there is a sibling. Has been the only variable that I know of in the past.
But you're indicating that it wouldn't be for this situation, for this opening.
That was our proposal. Okay. As a task force, obviously y'all can change that, but that was the proposal.
Yeah, the reasoning behind that, and again, it is, if we need to make an adjustment, we'll make that adjustment. We're just worried about just numbers. We're just worried about the numbers for each junior school. Right now it's balanced. Now there is room, but if, for example, a lot of students opt to stay at Highlands Junior School, then that may cause a situation where we have a capacity problem at Highlands. The same is true for Gentry. Those are the 2 schools that are impacted the most. So, but if that's something that we need to adjust, we'll be glad to do that.
Well, and then we'd have to make sure that we drew a line somewhere, because if you have a 5th grader and a 4th grader, and if you have a child in every grade level, when do we stop the grandfathering? So that's something else to consider.
And it's just not even capacity, but the staffing, because the staffing would just then be for 1 year, and then staffing kind of throws everything off.
Well, a few years ago, when we rezoned the high schools, folks who were grandfathered, we put a attendance stipulation in about, if you're late so many times or absent so many times, we're going to insist that you go to your zone school and take school transportation. Is that in place anywhere?
I know
No.
Student Services even has a
Is there
discipline policy.
Yeah, there
if
may be
you
a
are
policy about
at
that.
a campus that you're not zoned to and you are fall under
Then it-
disciplinary actions, then you lose your ability to maintain
Transfer
that.
can be revoked.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
I think that's our current Student Services policy. So
Then that would kick in then.
I would assume that
Okay.
we would follow that same guideline,
Right.
but I'm just assuming.
Yeah, we can check, and if that's currently in place, we would of course implement that.
Other questions for our committee?
This was a lot less painless than high school. Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, for our 21-22 budget workshop, number 1, we have with us Ginger McKay, Margie Grimes, Leanna Dixon, and I'd like to introduce to the board, if you have not met her or do not recall her, Miss Bridget Clark, our new CFO that will be replacing Miss Grimes when she retires at the end of the school year. Miss Clark was able to join the district today. So welcome, Miss Clark. Ginger, we're going to make you sit over there. You don't want to?
I get to see Vanna in a bit when I go up.
Okay, good.
Good evening. Board of Trustees. Turn that on, sorry. We have our sort of first budget workshop, but it's still very, very early in the legislative session and in our planning process. So we have several topics to cover, but each one will be relatively short. I'll briefly cover the legislative update, a couple of items, a couple articles. Before I go any further, we provided a notebook that we haven't done in the past where maybe you could keep your budget papers, there as we go along. Since we did expect this to be a more difficult year with revenue shortfalls, we thought, we had a few more budget workshops scheduled that might be convenient. So you can the way we designed the notebook is just every budget workshop is a separate little tab. So every time, like after this one, we give you a stack of paperwork, you just put it behind the next tab and they'll be like in the order of the workshops we've had. But we'll also, after the legislative update, Ginger McKay is going to give a brief review and discuss the program intent codes and the allotments that we received from TEA. Renee Woodruff, she handles the budget primarily, and she's out now. So we've asked Leanna to present to you the long-range capital improvement plan and some information on explaining our general fund balance should you get questions from community members, so forth. And we're giving Bridget the night off, but this might be my last time where you'll really see me in the lead spot. It'll be primarily from now on, it'll probably be her and Renee, and I'll be here as support and to help any way I can. But we didn't want to put her on the spot her first day, so
Thank
give
you.
her a little break. So in the notebook, we've provided a couple of different articles that contain some useful information regarding the legislative budget process. However, when these articles come out and we find that they're useful, then there's always more information that comes out later on. So I'll present some key points in the articles and then some follow-up information we've received since they were put out. So the first article is titled, Could Texas Schools Be Shortchanged Due to COVID-19? We have approximately 75% of Texas school districts who are reporting attendance losses. We still don't know if we're going to receive any hold harmless provision for the remaining 18 weeks of this school year. And that's important because it'll allow us to maintain our commitments we've planned for in our budget process for the current school year. Without that provision, there could be a twofold impact on school districts. First of all, there could be potential reductions in staffing and or other operating decisions. And then second and or the use of local funding will have to make up that gap. There's several public ed school advocacy groups, including superintendents and some business leaders, that have asked the commissioner to hold harmless for the rest of the school year so that students can receive the necessary funding as needed. We're hoping for a decision sometime in February. That's what they're kind of telling us. Sometime in February they should reach a decision. But since this article, there's been some more discussion on the hold harmless provision that's been had. Several of the state leaders have raised the issue of where the missing students are that have caused this 2.3% statewide reduction in enrollment. And of that 2.3%, approximately 40% of that amount is actually pre-K and kindergarten. And these are really voluntary students that are not required by state to attend classes, but the other 60%, they've questioned whether schools are making every effort to track these students down who didn't return to school. And according to Senator Larry Taylor, he says, so if you say, okay, we're just going to hold everybody harmless, does that take away the incentive to go find these students? If everyone just knows we're just going to give you the funding, they don't want us to stop the efforts is basically what they're saying. And they're asking for input and for people to contact their legislators and provide, strategies and actions that have been taken. Also, so there'll be a lot more support for holding us harmless and giving us that funding, if the efforts are being made to reach out to those missing students. And some of the efforts that Goose Creek has made to locate and serve students is that we hired, back in the fall, we hired a COVID case manager to assist with home visits and case management. We've also increased the number of home visits. We've provided additional training to principals and assistant principals on research-based attendance recovery measures. And also we created a district committee to review and to actively seek out those students who were no-shows or withdrawn. So we feel like we have sufficient actions we could show to where we've tried recovery. I spoke with Araceli. She basically said there's no one overriding feedback that they're getting. There's just various reasons students are not located or have moved. Some of their parents, she said, have lost jobs and moved out of the area, just a whole variety. Some families have actually moved in together. She said in some cases there's just a whole array of reasons for the decline. So there's another article. The second article that we provided for you to read is what Lieutenant Governor Patrick's rule change may mean for Texas education. At the time this article came out, it actually hadn't been approved, but at this point it has been approved, and this rule is now a part of the Senate rules where they require 18 or 5/9 to suspend the order of business and take up and cover a bill. Basically, they were short one Republican, so they just changed the rules so that the Democrats couldn't block any piece of legislation, purely along party lines. So that's a big change for the Senate. If you followed this rule, it used to be 2/3, and so it's now 5/9. So that's been a big change for the rules in the Senate on hearing legislation. Also, the article reminds us of House Bill 3. When we passed House Bill 3, you may recall it was very transformative in terms of public education. It created, and it was designed to support teachers and create an incentive pay for teacher excellence. It expanded the early childhood education. It also reduced Texas local property taxes. However, the bill did not really create a funding mechanism to maintain the property tax relief or the additional funds for public education. So now the legislature is sort of faced with pressure to cut, and and taxpayers and parents are fearing that it could be felt by students and families. Also, low enrollment numbers could be permanent in some areas where students are moving beyond district boundaries or outside of the school district. This causes districts to make difficult fiscal decisions. An education expert, finance expert at Georgetown University warned that districts typically react to enrollment-related funding losses by delaying budget cuts, which depletes reserves and or causes more financial strain later. And many will likely delay similar decisions this time around. We just don't know what enrollment's going to do, or if we're going to pick back up. That we're down still about 3%. About last I saw was about 745 students. Also, if you recall, when we prepare the budget, sometimes we build in 0.5% or a 1% growth. So then when you're down 3%, you've got a funding loss of about 4%. So we're really counting on the hold harmless provision and hoping, all districts are hoping that funding comes through. There also, though, has been some more information about the funding. Both the Senate and the House at this point, they've revealed their budget proposals, although they're different. They look a little different in both chambers. The most important thing is that the foundation school program is fully funded. So under current law, so everything that was in House Bill 3 will be honored. The other item to note is that while public ed was largely spared from cuts, the budget proposals are still $7.3 billion more than what the comptroller estimates will be available to spend. However, if you recall, part of the intent of the whole tax reform in the last legislative session was to transfer more of the responsibility of funding public education back to the state, because we were having such high property value growth and a lot of the money was being generated locally and a lot of recapture was being paid, therefore reducing the state's share of the budget. Well, still last year, even with that, there was $5.4 billion in state savings from the current biennium that is available to make up this 7.3. There's other things. They had asked state budgets to cut their budgets about 5%. There could be some savings there. And then, of course, it remains to be seen about the rainy day fund and or how they may require school districts to utilize our own fund balances is yet to be seen. And so just wanted to give you a couple updates on where we stand with the funding. The good news is no budget cuts. The bad news is there's no new money, not likely to be an increase in the basic allotment or anything like that. But at least we're not being, shortchanged, and they did go fully fund all the provisions they made a few years ago, which is good news.
And Margie, I just wanted to chime in right here while you're on this slide. Typically in a legislative session, which lasts about 6 months, we get somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 bills proposed, and only 20% of those bills will ever actually come on the floor for a vote and become law. So we're at the early stages of this, as in the not freak out just yet stage.
Right.
When we get closer to April or May, things will be a little bit more legitimized and we'll actually be able to plan a little bit better. But we did want to start early, giving you as much information as we possibly could. But we're still in that stage where we don't know what's real and what's just a political statement from someone who wants a bill to go up before the public. So thank you.
Yes, it's very early, and certainly we'll see more changes coming down. We just want to keep you informed because this is a unique year and we've had a lot of challenges, and this will certainly be a challenging budget year as well. With that, we'd like to turn it over to Ginger McKay. She's going to talk about our program intent code and the allotments provided by the state.
Good evening. Hopefully my voice will carry enough. These are the program allotments we get from the state when all the money comes in. They expect us to do certain things when our foundation money comes in, and we have to monitor this because the Texas Education Agency makes sure that what they expect is what we are following through with. So as you see here on the left, these are the codes. We have career technology, we have our special education, we have our state comp ed, which is considered like our tutorials and interventions and accelerated instruction. Okay. And we have early education allotment. Should I come get it, or it'll be good? And then we also have dyslexia as well as our CCMR. So the early education, the dyslexia, and CCMR have been new. They came out last year. CCMR was originally high school allotment, but it has changed a little bit. So these are the general areas we have to make sure that we're looking at for the state program funds. So then what you see in this next section is within the money that we receive from the state, our foundation school plan money, these are the amounts that the state will say that were allotted for these programs. You're like, well, where does that money come from, or how do they determine it? We have a template. Certain information has to go in, and once that information goes in, this is the general amount that they give us that we can allot. Now, this next part that says spending requirement, this section says the state expects that of this money that we see here on the left, you have to spend at least 55% of your CTE money on CTE program type things. So we look at the 55% of this amount. So we have to spend at least $8 million and that's odd amount there on CTE. So that's what we have to spend. So I'm going to go to the next one. In special ed, this is the approximate amount we get allotted that we can use up to that. 55 is what we have to spend, and as you can see, that's about $9 million for. So as you go to the state comp ed, the same thing. So you can see each of the different amounts. This is 55, 55. Now what gets really difficult is when a program expects you to spend 100%. It's hard sometimes to spend 100% of it, but they expect it. Dyslexia is at 100%, our CCMR is at 55. These percentages have changed from a few years back. CTE used to be 58%. So it's easier, at least we have 55 than just a couple hundreds. So the required spend, as you can tell, is these types. So what we expect is that when you look at our actual amount that we have budgeted, are we exceeding the amount that we could spend? We could, because right now we have budgeted $10 million. So we definitely feel like we would meet that. We have $21 million in special ed that we have budgeted right now. We have $15 million plus in state comp ed, about 2.2 in our bilingual ESL, and then you have 3.6 in early ed, 622,000 dyslexia, 729 in CCMR. So when the state looks to see if we're following it, we know right now we have allocated the required spend amount. Yes, yes, yes. And all of a sudden you get to a little no, yes, yes. So I'm going to explain that a little bit. So we consider ourselves to be in compliance with the spend requirement because we have allocated at least those amounts. What's happening in the early education amount is we have to keep looking a little further. We expected to have a little more in personnel cost, and we have not. Didn't need as many pre-K teachers and staff as we needed, so we're going to have to monitor this. So it may not make it for this year. What the good news is that the state of Texas does a 3-year average. Yeah, 3 years of 100% means we need to spend 100% all 3 years. But what will end up happening more than likely is with us opening a new academy or some of those other types of spending, we will make up this amount somewhere within the next 3 years. So that's kind of what we expect. So any questions? That was fast and furious, and I will tell you that Margie asked me to do the presentation. I was already making die cuts and cutouts. We're going to have fun with this. So hopefully we'll get to do that sometime. It makes it a little more fun. But
So the one element that hadn't spent, you mentioned, and that is also the area in which our enrollment is a little bit low this particular school year due to COVID. The early learners, we know pre-K and K haven't shown up as in the numbers that we had projected for them. So that may be a contributing factor to the no spend on that as well.
I have a quick question just about the special education line because I noticed that we're spending double the amount that we are required to by the state. And is that new? Is that a different amount as opposed to what we've allotted in the past?
Several years ago, we did some research on special ed, and we found that most districts, I want to say it was like 125%, they spend about 125% of the allotment because there's just still not. Now, they raised it up a lot. They did raise up the funding for that, but we still see most districts spend over what they're allotted for that program. And
well,
so
I felt that was kind of my question. Is this an attempt by us, obviously, to address specifically that concerning how we've been graded by the state in that department most recently?
That's tough. That's a tough question. It gets really complicated because the state has a MOE requirements. It's a maintenance of effort, and it's really complicated because if you spend this much, they're going to now expect you to spend that much going forward. So we're trying not to keep that too high because then we have to maintain that effort going forward, and it just gets more. Every year you have more and more students in the program, or if your program grows, you're just having to keep that up, and so. I don't know if Leanna has any other information. I know she's been working with special ed a lot. We've been trying to evaluate those program costs and to see where the program needs resources or doesn't, and
one of the
adjust
things
accordingly.
we do know about special ed is special needs students do have a smaller student-teacher ratio. So that obviously is going to drive up cost for those programs.
We have seen the cost go up some, and we're trying to review that carefully now. So this was just kind of a behind the scenes, not something that we normally put out there, but there's a lot more that goes into budget development. We just wanted to kind of give you a feel for that we're behind the scenes working all of this. When now everybody sends their budget in and we start compiling it, then we start looking, where are we and how are we with these programs? And Ginger is a great resource to this district and to all of us in this area. She provides a great service to help us keep this in. With that, we're going to move on and turn it over to Leanna. She's going to discuss our capital improvement plan and our fund balance.
Hello. I'm going to kind of go over a brief overview of the capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan is a 5-year plan which the district implemented in 2019-2020. The capital improvement budget is not required to be legally adopted by the Board of Trustees, but it is presented for information and to provide full transparency to the board and the community. The capital improvement plan is developed to account for projects that may span multiple fiscal years. The 21-22 fiscal year is the third year of this plan. Go back one. Capital improvement projects are funded by Chapter 313 revenues, foreign trade zone revenues, and funds from the sale of equipment, and also from any transfers that are approved by the board from the general fund. The 21-22 projected revenues total $4.7 million. The Chapter 313 revenues are typically budgeted at 70% of the original protection and supplemental payments. For the 21-22 school year, we've reduced that to 50% of the anticipated revenues due to lower industrial property values as a result of the COVID-19. We've also lowered the foreign trade zone projection as well. Looking at the third column on the expenditure side, the one that's outlined in the box, we have approximately $3.5 million in projects slated for the 21-22 school year. This consists of $3.1 million in projects that were pulled out or voted out of the bonds, and also additional $450K identified in additional funding requests. Any questions on the CIP fund? A significant topic in the 2021 legislative session will be the school district's fund balance. TASBO, TASA, and TASB have collaborated to create a document to explain the school district fund balance variations. In September, we recommended to assign the funds over the targeted 3 months of operating reserve to be committed. We've completed the 2019-2020 year with approximately $19 million remaining. And year to date, we've exhausted approximately $15.6 million of the 19 with budget amendments. Any questions?
So that sort of completes the information we wanted to share. Short topics, but we hope you'll find some of it useful. And at our next workshop next month, we want to start kind of focusing on some of our operating expenditures and those budgets.
And board, you're welcome at this time to stump Ms. Clark if you can with any random questions.
Random questions. Okay. I know that originally you had hoped we were going to do this at like 5:30 instead of 8:30. 8:30. I don't. That's something that we would need to decide as a group here if we could do that at a different time. I know our agenda tonight is much larger than we anticipated it would be because of this and some other things that have come on in the last couple of days. So at this time, I would like to ask my fellow board members if they have an opinion on whether or not the next budget workshop should be held separately from regular meeting or before regular meeting or at another time altogether. I don't know if you want to look at our next.
Margie, you have the calendar for that?
Yes, in the very front of your notebooks, under the very first tab, you should have a copy there of the budget calendar. And pretty much we've got them. The board workshops are indicated. We had thought maybe to schedule the meetings between 5 and 6, where you see the It was February 1st, which we did this one under superintendent reports. We also have a couple of others scheduled. Workshop number 2 says April the 5th, and that was again right before the board meeting. We had proposed this to try to make more efficient of your time. We can schedule it on another date. We continue this format if you prefer and do it in the superintendent's reports.
March 1st for a next board agenda item, which would be superintendent's reports budget update.
And we just included that because it wasn't as much information.
Is it a smaller?
It's a smaller amount of information, and then really it starts picking up after that. You know, we really start getting into the budget. We meet with TASB and do a salary. They review our pay plan review, and we start working on the staffing and the more pertinent costs that affect the budget. So I think the superintendent report would work well for March 1st, but maybe come April, that April 5th, you know, maybe we, especially if we moved it a day or two later.
The earlier time seems to be a little bit more difficult for us, but maybe on an alternate
another date,
special meeting or workshop meeting as opposed to regular board meeting. But we can address that in March when we get a little closer.
Sure. We just wanted the board to have that opportunity to, if you wanted more of a workshop style of discussion, and you know, sometimes
maybe by April we would be
maybe by that point. Like that. Okay, that sounds great. Just let us know.
So any other thoughts, or is that good to?
Just the benefit to having the budget workshop sole is that's all you talk about, and you spend your entire time on that workshop.
Yeah, right. You'll think of something to add to the agenda. All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the binder.
Great.
Yes, glad to have you here and look forward to spending good money. All right. You are done with your superintendent reports, yes?
Yes, but...
That's all that's on the agenda tonight. I'm sorry, sir.
But the next item.
So sorry. Okay, so it's action items on here. Are we prepared to go to number 8 action items at this time? Or are we ready for
Yes, ma'am. I would just submit to you that action item 8A, B, C, and D are all related to a 313 proposal by Covestro LLC.
Oh, we have to sign them.
Margie, do we have representatives here able to speak about this proposal? Margie? Do you have representatives here prepared to speak on the 313 with Covestro?
Yeah, Dan back there.
Welcome, Mr. Casey. Come on up.
I don't have a pen.
Mr. Dan Casey is with Moat Casey, and he assists the school district and the partner in assessing the value limitation agreement. And I'll let you take it over from there, Mr. Casey.
Good evening. I'll try to mask down a little bit, but President Woods, members of the board, Dr. O'Brien, appreciate the opportunity to be here. Kevin O'Hanlon was going to try to be here, but he called me late Friday. He found out he'd been double booked for the evening, so but I appreciate the opportunity to be here. What you have before you with this Covestro agreement is that they are withdrawing their current agreement that had been approved previously and are filing a new application. It's basically it's the same project they're filing. That's you have it first. I think one before you take action. We recommend the conflict of interest provisions be addressed, since that's one the state auditor's office has much interest in, and we try to save you grief on that. But beyond that, what they're doing is canceling their current agreement and then submitting essentially the new project, the same project on a different timeline. And this is not uncommon. I've worked on a number of amendments on these this year because with the economy as such, that it's left a lot of things in flux as far as this goes. And this one, as far as, they have a $100 million limitation. It kicks in the 28-29 year. But this is a significant project because for the 10 years that they're there, they have a they're anticipating over $1 billion in taxable value out there for INS tax purposes. So that's a substantial benefit to you. I think also given your size, you're eligible to negotiate supplemental payments of up to about $2.2 million a year over these years. And then as far as we know right now, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, revenue protection payment of about $12.5 million is what we're showing in the initial limitation year under current law. And there's some changes potentially out there on that. But this is one that one of the other options on here, and I've seen this in other cases, is that they've sought as much flexibility as they can on the timeline. But if they move forward on this on an earlier time frame, they can come back to you and request an amendment to move that time limitation and timetable up. And we've seen a number of districts do that over time too. So there's a lot of flexibility there. But I think this is a very sizable project and a good good addition to your tax base. And I think that the fact that they're willing to they're running timetable problems themselves getting this done and come back and want to refile an application with you, I think is a good sign that they intend to move forward on this. So I
agree, Mr. Casey. I think it was shut down about a year ago, and when many industrial partners were concerned about the economic future, and we were excited to have them come back to the table and make this proposal. And you've explained it very well in that they're canceling the original contract that would be about a year and a half, 2 years stale at this point in time. So they're bringing forth a brand new contract for the board to consider this evening.
Yeah, new application for you, and we'd go through the process. But I think given that you've got agreements and other things, we want to expedite. We're going to do everything we can to expedite this too. And one of the things I mentioned and I think Margie did an excellent job for you, kind of summarizing where you're at on budget issues. We've got on the 313 side, this law is up for renewal this year. It expires right now as of December 31st, 2022. So if it's not dealt with this legislative session, they'll be starting over essentially. That's problematical. If they start fresh over, they've got essentially cost issues related to how they cost out bills and the rest. So it's not advantageous. So, and our firm and O'Hanlon's firm been working with Hilco Partners since last fall, and we had conference calls with about half of the Senate offices this fall and trying to educate them on 313. We've got a fairly major effort going on there, and we'll see where that goes. Now, the thing is that even if it didn't renew, it's not going to affect, that doesn't have any impact on agreements that have already been approved by both parties. So those are contracts between the district and the company that remain in effect. So, we'll still have anything that's out there that's been approved is still going to be ongoing. But I think that, this has gotten pretty strong support. I mean, I think one of the things to throw in the mix, this is a substantial project that I think benefits the state. We've had the opportunity to work on Tesla this summer, went faster than a speeding bullet. I went by it last night. Bridget's going to think I'm following her around because I was at her last district last Monday night, and now I show up here. But she's done an excellent job. You've got excellent staff between Margie, Bridget, everybody else. You've got excellent staff here. But I passed the construction site last Monday night driving back and off of the 130 toll road, and they're working night and day. They're out there. There's lights out there. There's people out there working night and day. And they told us the last plant they did in Shanghai, a 5 million square foot plant, they were turning cars out within a year of the time they started construction on the plant. So they move on a different timetable than a lot of companies, but we'll see what goes.
As I recall, the original agreement was about Covestro's diversification in a global society. So I think they're thinking about the future, thinking about being proactive in that regard. And the only thing our board's familiar with value limitation agreements, but the only thing that they would need to know specifically about this, that it was set on the table, now it's back up. Yeah, that's it. And I think that's a very positive sign that they're willing to come back to you and request the new application. Thank you, Mr. Casey. Board, do you have any questions for Dan? Thank you, sir. We sure do appreciate you being here.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks so much, and we appreciate your work. Thank you.
Absolutely. So at this time, Madam President, I believe you would take those action items. You may do it independently, but action items A, B, C, and D for approval. Administration's recommendations for approval.
All right.
On item A, we just sign our agreement or our disclosure, right?
Yes, item A, and I believe all board members present have passed them in.
Yep.
Signed the conflict of interest disclosure forms. So, so action on 8A is complete, or do we need a motion and a movement?
I would move.
Move to accept.
The last time we did this, what you just turned in is the written document.
Yes.
I think, Madam President, you would call for a vote. If anyone has a conflict of interest, state so now, and each person say their name and yes or no. That's the way we did last
we'll
time.
Just call for a, all right, a vote. Okay, so we'll start on the far end there. Anyone? So we'll start with you, Mrs. Guy, if you will state your name and if you have a conflict of interest.
Tiffany Guy, and no.
Augustine Laredo, no conflict.
Jessica Woods, no conflict.
Ben Poppy, no conflict.
Richard Clem, no conflict.
Howard Sampson, no conflict.
You have fulfilled the action item of 8A.
Except that we are missing one board member this evening, so that will have to be taken care of. Ms. Garcia at a later date? Okay. Yeah. So moving on to 8B, consideration of request from Covestro to cancel tax limitation agreement with district in Texas Comptroller File 1232 pursuant to Chapter 313 of the Property Tax Code.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Clem and a second from Mr. Laredo. All in favor, please raise your right hand or say aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? So there are 5-4. Motion passes with 1 abstention and 1 absence. Moving on to action item 8C, consideration of the new application for value limitation agreement from Covestro pursuant to Chapter 313 of the Property Tax Code.
I'll move to approve.
I have a motion from
Second.
Mr. Guy and a second from Mr. Clem. Any questions or comments? All in favor, please raise your right hand to accept this motion.
The new one.
Yeah,
Any
that's the new
opposed?
one.
Any abstentions? I believe that was 6-4 with 1 absent. Motion passes. Moving on to 8D. Consideration of retained consultants to assist the district in processing the Chapter 313 application from Covestro LLC.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Laredo, a second from Mr. Poppy. Any questions or comments?
One question. The consultant name?
Okay. Yeah, speak into the mic so I can hear you.
Consultant, the name?
Kevin O'Hanlon is our assistant. Margie, is that correct?
This will be the same consultants that we use
Yes.
for these property
Okay.
tax code 313s. Okay.
Just got a question on, that's it.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand or say aye. That would be 6-4, none against, 1 absent. Motion passes. All right, we are at 8E, correct?
Madam President, for consideration of consent agenda, administration brings before the board this evening, number 1, donation from Highlands Elementary PTO. Number 2, one-time payment for early notice resignation or retirement to any full-time teacher, nurse, librarian, and speech pathologist. Number 3, rezoning recommendations for junior schools. Number 4, amended and restated memorandum of understanding with Lee College regarding the support of college readiness programs for spring 2021. Number 5, joint election agreement with Lee College. Number 6, adoption of order and notice calling for a Board of Trustees election for single-member districts 1, 2, 4, and 5. Number 7, increase the total project budget of the Robert E. Lee School Armstrong Auditorium project. Number 8, select construction manager at risk, CMAR, as the delivery method for the Robert E. Lee's High School and Gentry Junior School Fine Arts projects. Number 9, construction manager at risk, CMAR evaluation rankings and selection or delegate authority to the superintendent or designee to negotiate and to approve the contract and subsequent guaranteed maximum prices with Bartlett & Koch general contractors or subsequently ranked contractors for the Early Learning Academy project. Number 10, second option to extend CSP for fencing materials, installation, and related items. And 11, tax refunds. Administration would recommend approval of the consent agenda.
Now, one question, on the rezoning, is this saying that we're going to vote for number B?
B, as presented this evening by the rezoning committee. That's the one that's in your packet you got tonight.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions or any that need to be pulled for separate consideration?
Number 7, please.
I'd like to pull number 7 for separate consideration. Any other questions or comments or any motions?
I would make a motion that we approve items 1 through 6 and 8 through 11 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Clem and a second from Mr. Poppy to accept items 8E 1 through 6 and 8 through 11 as presented. All in favor, please raise your right hand or say aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? So we have 5 for, 1 abstention and 1 absent. Motion passes for 1 through 6 and 8 through 11. Now we could consider number 7.
Mr. Laredo?
Well, I saw it's a little bit over, 354,000. But the part that kind of brought my attention was the additional funding for sprinklers. Why weren't those put
I'll
originally?
let Ms. Garcia speak to it, but there was a change during the course of this project from beginning to end.
Did we heard a report about that recently, I believe?
Yes, ma'am.
And Ms. Garcia can explain it better than me, so.
I hope so. It was a bit complicated. In the auditorium project, originally in the original design, we had discussed either sprinkling or not sprinkling the building, and so at that point, the architect met with an inspector from the city of Baytown, and in reviewing that work that was presented, it was determined at that time that it did not need to be sprinklered. And then later on in the project, way later on in the project, this came back up. At that point, scaffolding was already up, and so a lot of the construction had started already. And at that point, the city had requested for us to sprinkler the building, and funds were already expended on other items to renovate the project. And so it's the correct thing to do for the building, and so we just need additional funding. The funding comes from remaining bond funds that have already been saved from the overall bond project.
This did come endorsed from the Citizens Bond Advisory.
Correct. We had a meeting last week, I believe. Yeah.
That was my understanding, was that the city changed code requirements on.
It has a lot to do with interpretation, and so it does.
City code. Good luck.
So I did explain to the committee, it does have a lot to do with interpretation, and with every project, there's a learning experience for us. We did meet with the fire marshals and the project architects and our team, and really have discussed how it got to this point, and so also to prevent that from happening in future projects, and so.
So I have a couple of comments. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
In regards to this, number one, from a safety standpoint, I know I am worried about the money, of course, because it's more than the money, though. I'm more worried about, is there any other auditoriums or large areas like this where there's a lot of children congregating that are not sprinklered because of this miscommunication?
It's almost like a grandfathered code, basically, that would either require you to update it depending on what type of work you do to the facility. It's how the code is interpreted. If it's one-to-one replacements of items, code does not require you to update it. There's also different percentages of renovation that go into effect, and so that really needs to be really studied very intensely prior to moving forward with the project.
I would like to propose that maybe in the future, and I know that in the future that we do anything like this, whether the city requires it or not, just for the safety standard, for our kids, if God forbid anything ever happened, getting a full auditorium with kids out, it doesn't matter how many exits you have. But the other comment I have, and I'm definitely not saying, I don't know, the communication with the city and the inspectors, and I think President Woods hit the nail on the head, the city codes, and dealing with people just because of, I'm sure everybody's been round and round with the city and their person at some point. Dr. O'Brien, would it be appropriate for you to bring that up with Mr. Davis and making sure that these kind of things get addressed, because we can't leave it at the interpretation of one department versus another, especially when we're spending our taxpayers' money. We have to make sure that their message is clear and consistent, so that therefore we're not caught in a situation like this. And especially when...
Yes, sir. That's a conversation we can definitely have. As Ms. Garcia alluded to, there's so many different variables and so many different in each project. For example, I know one was not required because it was not flammable exterior paneling. So there's all these different variables that we look at, but absolutely, anytime we go into reconstruct a site, we would, as we did with Stewart Career Tech, incorporate sprinklers into that system.
I think it's just one of those things that's extremely important.
I would like to add that, for months now, maybe a little over a year, we've been having monthly meetings with the city, and that's been extremely helpful for us. Obviously, the situation occurred, but I think we've averted a lot more items with just our monthly meetings with the city and we discuss all of our projects, where we're at that point, future projects with them once a month, and so that's been extremely helpful for us.
Just for clarity too, though, sprinkler system was already budgeted for a portion of the room.
20%, I believe.
Exactly, as according to code. So there was sprinkler system to be installed.
And there was already a partial system in place as well.
Right. This is just now adding to the budget to cover the entire facility.
80%.
Yes.
Yeah, the other 80% of the room, which is an updated code.
And I'll be honest with you, primarily because this particular project was budgeted to the penny to bring it to the highest quality current state of art, so that it'll be functional for 50 years or longer to go. We did not want to cut corners on the redesign of this facility. So the money was committed to those aspects of the design and construction.
That's a great point, Dr. O'Brien, because I do want to mention, for example, as we have realized we do need to add this sprinkler system to this building, there are requirements in the project itself that have asked for us to update their rigging system, for example, which is extremely outdated. So that piece in itself is extremely expensive, replacing all of the seats. So all the other things that everyone's going to see when you walk into the space, we still needed to accomplish. And so we just needed a little extra funding to help us.
I can't show the future, but just to give you a snapshot, this auditorium will no longer look like it's in the 70s or 80s. It will look like Lee College Performing Arts Center. When you walk in, you'll see the walls and the curtains that are of a modern age.
It really will be grand. So
I hope to get a tour.
I'm sorry?
I hope to get a tour.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Thank you.
Bring your hard hat.
Thank you.
No open toe shoes.
Number 7 or any other considerations? Or
I'd like to move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Laredo and a second from Mr. Clem to approve item number 7, increasing the total project budget. All in favor, please raise your right hand or say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, 1 absent. Motion passes 6.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to 8F, future board agenda items, board training and board meetings. Do I have any requests for future board agenda items at this time? I know there's lots of board training coming up that's available.
You and Dr. O'Brien seem to be doing a great job of coming up with agendas.
would
Don't
like
put that on me.
I would like to echo that. This has been, the last few meetings have been very, very lengthy.
We're busy people. This is a busy district.
It is, that's true.
Okay, so, and for future board trainings, I know we have the winter governance is coming up online virtually beginning of March, but I think you all received an email about some weekly free to us as MASBA members webinars for credit.
Yeah.
And then there is a equity symposium by the NSBA, which is coming up on February the 10th, next Wednesday. So that's also free for us to register for and get CTE credit and concerning equity issues in school districts.
Wednesday, we just log in and we're done, right?
I think you do have to register though.
Yeah, that's the one with the tongue.
Yeah, there's a link on the NSBA site where you can register to log in.
Yes.
Yes, it's next Wednesday. Yeah, the Gulf Coast Chamber.
Wednesday night.
Is that next Wednesday?
It's
That's this Wednesday.
This Wednesday.
Okay.
The NASB thing is next Wednesday.
Yes, on the 10th. So yes, Ms. Garcia, if you'll remind us all to sign up for all of this stuff that we have available here. Future board meetings, I don't think we have anything special lined out of the ordinary unless we decide to modify the budget workshop.
Do we need to do that now or next month?
I think we should wait till next month personally, but I mean, if March 1st, we can discuss if we want to have that board workshop at a separate meeting or not.
Yes.
All right, so we can move on then to agenda item G, closed meeting. At this time. Woohoo! Okay, this board will now recess into a closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Section 551.071, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 551.082, 083, 84, and 087. No action will be taken while the board is in closed meeting. The time is now 8:57 p.m., February 1st, 2021. See you in a little bit.
8:57.
And I know we have legal counsel in the audience. We'll take a recess and convene into closed session, and then we'll call you back.
So the time is now 10:56. The board will reconvene from closed session. No action was taken while the board was in closed session. Let's proceed on our agenda to 8I, consideration of personnel.
At this time, administration would recommend to the board to approve 4 elections as teachers and accept 12 resignations and retirements as presented.
For approval?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Laredo and a second by Mrs. Guy. Any questions or comments? None heard at this time. All in favor, please raise your right hand and say aye. 6-4, showing 0 against and 1 absent. Motion passes.
Administration has a few administrative positions to recommend to the Board of Trustees. Yvette Hainvey as educational and diagnostician.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Clem and a second by Mr. Sampson. Any questions or comments? None heard. Raise your right hand or say aye for approval. Any against? None seen. 1 absent. Motion passes.
Administration recommends to the board for assistant principal at Horace Mann Junior High, Aaron Clement.
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Clem.
Hey, just pick one. I'll be this.
Second by Mr. Laredo.
Yeah.
Questions or comments? All in favor, please raise your right hand or say aye. None opposed, 1 absent. Motion passes with 6 ayes. 6-4.
High school counselor at Goose Creek Memorial High School, Stella Greer.
Move for approval?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Laredo, second by Mr. Clem. Questions or comments? None seen? Do you have questions?
No, I'm just ready to raise my right hand.
Please raise your right hand. None opposed. Motion passes 6-4 approval.
Final administrative recommendation for the evening is Director of Fine Arts, Ray Levan.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Guy and a second by Mr. Laredo. Any questions or comments? None seen or heard. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed?
So slow,
Any
sorry.
abstaining? So we have 5-4, 1 absent, 1 abstention, none opposed. Motion passes.
Oh, like that. 1 year here and 1 year there.
Okay, that brings us to that's all yours, Ms. Dr. O'Brien?
We have action item J.
Yes, brings us to action item J.
Madam President, I move that the board approve the settlement agreement resolving the employee complaint as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Any questions or comments? We have a motion by Mrs. Guy and a second by Mr. Laredo. All in favor of said motion, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? None seen. 1 absent. Motion passes. At this time, I would like to revisit agenda item 8F, future board agenda items, board trainings, and board meetings.
I would move that we schedule a meeting for February 24th at 6 p.m. for a special meeting for the sole purpose of completing the superintendent's evaluation.
A second.
And what he said.
I second.
So I have a motion by Mr. Clem and a second by Mr. Poppy. Any questions or comments? That would be February 24th, Wednesday, 6 p.m. Ms. Garcia, no opposition on your end? No? We should probably verify with her first.
That's a good point.
Okay, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? None seen. 1 absent. Motion passes. So February 24th, 6 p.m. Okay? Any other trainings, agenda items whatsoever? None at this time. That would take us to agenda item number 9.
11:02 p.m.
I move that we adjourn.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I forgot to bring my book with me.
Christian, what else do I need to fill out on this? Let me just read some training.
Thank you. Safe travels.